Hey everyone, welcome to Beyond the Game, the Student Athlete Journey podcast, which is dedicated to exploring the experiences of those who've transitioned from collegiate sports to life beyond the fields. I'm Dr. Susan Cardillo-Cunningham, licensed clinical social worker, and your host today. So, through a social work perspective, looking at sports, we're going to be discussing some key findings from recent data analysis that I completed. But data alone cannot tell this story. That's why I have with me today two former student athletes that are going to bring their unique perspectives to our discussion. First, we have Erica, a former Division I female athlete. Erica's journey as an athlete began when she was 10 years old, and she went on to compete in the NCAA from 2021 to 2023. Erica did not enter college as a recruited athlete. She walked onto a team for a sport she had never played before. So Erica will share her thoughts on the rigorous demands of D1 athletics, her navigation of academic pressures, and her transition to life after sports. Also joining us is Ryan, a former Division III athlete who made his mark on the football field. Ryan's story is one of perseverance, balancing the demands of Division III athletics with his academic commitments and successfully transitioning to a career path after his athletic days ended. In contrast to Erica's path, Ryan was recruited out of high school to play at the collegiate level, and his experiences offer a different perspective on the collegiate athlete journey. So my goal is really to engage Erica and Ryan in a meaningful dialogue, exploring their experiences while we reflect on the results of my recent analysis of data provided by the NCAA through the Mental Health and Wellness Study, a demographic database, and the probability of going pro. Whether you're a student athlete yourself, a coach, an administrator, a policymaker, or simply someone who's interested in the world of collegiate sports, we invite you to get a cool drink, sit back, and join our discussion today. So thanks again, Erica and Ryan, for joining us today. Why don't you say hello to the audience?
Hi, thanks for having me on your podcast. I'm really happy to be here and talk about these topics.
Hi, thank you for having me today. I'm really excited to talk about some things that we got going on here.
Great. I'm so happy to have you guys with me today to really validate some of the research that I've been doing. So let's take a look. By first, I'm going to share with you all some statistics that the NCAA has provided for 2023. And these are approximate figures for a probability of going professional. So really, when we look at this, I actually started out with there being 8 million high school athletes that competed nationally in the 2023 sports seasons to get to 524,000 out of that 8 million, right? You have to be pretty good at your craft to get through that barrier. And so that's representative of about 6.5% of all high school athletes will compete on a college level. Then when we go deeper into this, you're going to see that at the end of a season, there's about 46,000 draft eligible or pro eligible athletes out of that 500,000 that compete on an annual basis. And actually, the NCAA athletic demographics have increasingly gone up every year since 2020. Now you're talking about an even smaller slice of that 8 million students who once aspired to go to college or go pro. So how many do you think, Erica, Ryan, actually go pro or get drafted out of that 46,000? Do you have a guess?
I want to say maybe like 6,000.
6,000? All right,
I
good
was gonna
guess.
say I was gonna say anywhere less than like 5,000.
5,000? Well, hold on to
Yeah.
your chairs, guys, because the actual number, well, the estimated number was about 922 athletes.
Wow.
So that's about 2% of that 46,000. And it's less than 0.5%, I believe, of that original 8 million student athletes, right? So let's sit there for a second. How do you feel about that? And where does your story fit into that?
It doesn't really surprise me because now that I think about it, like I don't really know too many people who've gone pro after college. So it doesn't really surprise me. And as far as like how I see myself in that, I never considered going pro really ever as like a career path for me. So I'm not really surprised that there's such a significant drop in those numbers.
I mean, yeah, it definitely makes sense. Just considering like I played football and typically there's a lot of people on the team. I think when I graduated high school, there was only like 4 or 5 of us that went to college to continue sports. So I mean, I can understand where it drops off a decent amount, especially just from like the high school to NCAA level, and then even taking it further from there, because obviously there's different divisions in football, and it's a little harder to get drafted at a certain division. So I can see why there's so few drafted athletes out of um even the eligible athletes to be drafted.
What does how does that realization of not going professional have on the social or emotional well-being of student athletes, of collegiate student athletes, right? So that was like the whole basis of my research that I was doing here. And the biggest part was the health and wellness study. So out of the 526,000, the half a million student athletes, about 23,000 responded to the survey in 2022 and 23. So I'm just curious to know, in your time as as an athlete, did you ever participate in an NCAA study? Did you know that they did studies of?
I might have participated in the study, but not in a way that I knew that it was the study. I might have gotten a few emails about one or another, but I've never been approached saying, we want you guys to participate in this sort of study.
So in general, the NCAA athlete composition is about 54% male athletes and 46% female athletes. Um, in the health and wellness participation, it's about 56% male athletes and 37% female athletes. We then do have this 6% of what they defined in the study as queer non-binary, which is supposed to be representative of the LGBTQIA population. And although I have them here, not all of the responses were broken down like this. So there's a little bit of inconsistency on how these questions were all answered as well. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there for you. But like looking at these numbers and then thinking about the study, do you feel like you're represented in the results of these studies?
Not necessarily, honestly. I mean, obviously everybody has like different experiences, so it would be a little better, I would say, to like get at least a few more people's like ideas and like things they have to say, because obviously a lot of people do feel the same, but I don't feel like that number represents enough of the people that might feel the same as others.
Yeah. And so that's something that we can, provide to the NCAA as recommendations for going forward. In the research and looking at the mental health impact and the factors that impact mental health for student athletes, what I found was that issues related to transition, such as overwhelming anxiety, sleep difficulties, and relationships with coaches, financial worries, and academic worries were like more highly reported than by female and athletes of color than by male athletes. Do you feel like you were prepared emotionally and with a path that would lead you to success?
When it comes to like the mental health stuff, I feel like some people don't have a great relationship with their head coach. Um, More so like an assistant coach or someone they just feel a little bit closer to, because head coaches are a little bit higher when it comes to sports than an assistant coach. Like they're like closer to you a little, especially like in football. Like we have like position groups, so like really it was a little bit easier for me to talk to like my specific position group coach rather than like a head coach, although I still was able to talk to my head coach about things. As for like offering like mental health services, they briefly covered it at like the beginning of the year, usually just always telling us like if we need someone to talk to, like here are the resources, like, or you could even talk to us, like whatever you're comfortable with, that kind of thing. And I mean, I've even had teammates that had to like step away or whatever due to like mental health stuff, like stuff going on outside of the sport. The resources are there, and men typically aren't going to report it as much as like women would.
And even in looking at the NCAA studies, there is more preparedness of D3 athletes. There's less denial of not going pro. And it is stated that they are more prepared than some D1 athletes. So
There's a few things that I have going on in my head after you said that. I feel like it might be a little different. Like, I think these studies, the way that they're broken down, like that you've explained them, like more so the relationship with your coach, like between coaches and athletes, I think probably at all levels, but definitely through my experience at the D1 level, um, there's a lot of moving parts there because there's your head coach and then there's also assistant coaches, but we also spend a lot of time with our trainers. So I think that these studies kind of need to look at those dynamics. I know maybe not all teams have that, but you may approach your trainer before you approach your head coach. As far as the denial of going pro and stuff like that, I think it's a lot different for girls than it is for boys. On my team, I don't think anyone had the expectation of going pro. I mean, unless you were going to the Olympics, there was really no option to go pro.
So in my research, what was found was that one of the hardest transition points is shedding the athletic identity. And so, what was your experience with changing your skin per se? And did you struggle with that? Do you still hang on to your athletic identity in your careers that you have found?
I mean, the transition is interesting. You're putting a lot of your time and mental capacity into one thing, and then you kind of have to switch it, especially a lot of student athletes don't really have time for, like a part-time job. And if that is something they're doing, it's probably something that's tough for them and that they're really, it's more probably dependent on financial things in that aspect if they do have a job. Um, so you really do have to, you're changing like your whole life basically. You have to focus more on like, networking and meeting people and going to a job. So I mean, that's pretty tough. Shedding the identity, I feel like it never goes away. I mean, there's definitely parts of it that stick with you, whether it's competitiveness or, always wanting to perform well in your job or like something like that. So it really never, that part of your identity doesn't really go away.
But like she said, also like the competitiveness, like always wanting to do your best, that kind of thing, like that doesn't leave you. I think really just the physical part of it leaves. And for some people, obviously, like that is kind of hard. And I can understand why. I mean, when you're doing something your entire life and then just having to go to not doing it anymore, I can see why some people would struggle with that. Like I've been playing football forever, but obviously I knew once I got to college, like, this is probably it. So it was a little different, just being regular.
Just being regular. Yeah. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me this evening. And, I know we talked a little bit about numbers early on, but really hearing your perspectives as, someone who sat on a bench or, in a locker room and had all of these demands on your time and on your personal space and your personal life. And, really my takeaways from my research and from our conversation tonight is that as social workers, we had to really embed ourselves in the lives of student athletes way before they get to the point of what do I do next, right? Helping to navigate the systems of academics and financial planning and career choices, just like we do with every other kid who's not an athlete, right? That's the focus. So just real quick, you're both graduates now. So what are you doing and what's your plan for the future?
As far as the plan, that's still in progress. But as far as after athletics, I did continue my academic career. So I'm getting my master's right now at the same university where I was an athlete.
For me, I put a little halt to my academic journey, but serve as a personal trainer, and looking to further my education at some point to try to get into physical therapy, just because I want to help people.
Well, thanks again, guys. And to our audience, I hope you really enjoyed our conversation, and we'll talk to you next time.